Swimming in Drew Barrymore's pool, vacationing at Diane Keaton's getaway home, going to the Grammys for Rocking Paris or Rocking Paris Fashion Week. This was the lifestyle of Becket Cook, and he absolutely loved it until the day he suddenly didn't.
Becket Cook was living what many today would consider the dream life. He was a successful set designer in the fashion world and mingling with Hollywood's elite. He was also openly gay. Yet it still wasn't enough.
So I was at Fashion Week and I went to all the shows, to a bunch of the parties, and I was at a party one night and I just kind of looked over the crowd and I just thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, this isn't gonna cut it anymore.
In his book, A Change of Affection, Becket shares how God turned his identity upside down and brought him the kind of peace and freedom that he never knew was possible.
Please welcome to the 700 Club, Becket Cook. Becket, great to meet you.
Good to meet you.
I'm just loving your book, A Change of Affection. It's very powerful.
Thank you.
Well, tell us what happened to you. You were just 10 years old, completely innocent, over at your friend's house for a sleepover, as you often were. Mm-hmm. But that night was different. What happened?
Well, in the middle of the night, I was awoken by my friend's father, and he was molesting me. Wow. And it was very shocking and scary, because I had this kind of image in my mind of, if I didn't kind of allow him to do what he was doing, I had this image of him with a knife, like that he was gonna stab me or kill me. Yeah. So it was this very...
Because it was evil, what was happening.
Yeah.
Then he came back a couple of different times.
Yeah, then he left the room and like came back, tried to do stuff again, and I kind of resisted. He left the room, came back one more time, and that's when I was sitting up in bed, and he said something weird like, "Oh, I just wanted to see if you needed a fan or something." Yeah. And I said, no, I'm okay. Yeah. But that was a very scary night.
And you never told, well, you told one friend, but you didn't tell anybody. Why didn't you tell anyone?
I didn't tell my parents because I knew that my father probably would have had him killed. My father was a really powerful attorney in Texas. And so I was like, I don't want my father going to prison over this. You were
the youngest of 8 children,
yes,
and you didn't want all your siblings to be fatherless, and
right. So and also, I didn't want people to know. You know, it was kind of it was a very kind of shameful experience, and I didn't want it to get out to people.
Well, Becket, how do you think that night affected your sexuality later on?
Well, for many, many years, living as a gay man, I never really thought it affected me. Yeah. I just kind of denied that it affected me, because I didn't want my sexual identity as a gay man to be tied to such a scary, weird, gross night. Yeah. But after I became a Christian, I realized that night had a huge impact on my sexuality and where I kind of ended up going.
You think that was the door that was open?
I think it was, yeah. I think that kind of cemented it.
Then all through grade school, high school, you were very popular with the ladies, and you went to all the dances, and you kind of liked that.
Yeah, I was very social, yeah.
But you weren't attracted to them. You realized you were attracted to boys.
Yeah, I was attracted to the same sex, and since I was young, yeah. So you
lived this dual life, and you thought it was kind of cool for a while, and then when did you decide, or why did you decide to fully embrace the gay lifestyle eventually?
Well, eventually, I mean, in high school and in college, I had gay best friends, and I was able to explore my sexuality, and I went to gay bars and explored that whole life. And I kind of felt like, oh, like this is home for me. These are my people. But it wasn't until after college when I had my first relationship with a guy, we fell in love, and that's when homosexuality as my identity became I embraced it fully. And so I came out to my family, I came out to my parents, I came out to everyone after college.
Did they freak?
They didn't freak. My parents were actually quite lovely about it. And again, I was the youngest of 8 kids, so by the time they got to me, they were kind of like, "Oh, you're gay? Okay, cool." No, my parents were Christians, and they were, you know, they believed it was a sin. And But they were very sweet and very loving about it. They didn't kick me out of the house. There was no dramatic scenes. They were just kind of like, my dad, I remember my father asked me, you know, did I do anything wrong? Like, are you angry at me for anything? And I said, no, Dad, like, I'm fine. This is who I am. I'm gay. Like, don't worry. It's not your fault. And
so what were your relationships with men like? I mean, sometimes you were in a serious relationship and sometimes you weren't, right?
yeah, I was in, over the years in LA, I was in 5 serious relationships with guys.
When did you begin feeling, okay, something's empty? You even said in your book, you felt dead inside.
I was at Paris Fashion Week in March of 2009. I used to go to fashion weeks in New York and Paris, and I was at this party, an after party. It was very glamorous. Everyone from the fashion world was there. I think Kanye was there. And I just remember looking out over the sea of people, and I had done everything. I'd been to every party, I traveled the world, been to so many different things, so many dinner parties at like movie stars' houses, so that night in Paris, I just was looking out over the crowd, and I thought, this is not it. This is not the meaning of life. What am I going to do for the rest of my life?
Amazing. You had the life you thought everybody wanted. But what happened? One day you were having coffee at your favorite coffee spot, and you saw these people with Bibles, which you never had seen in 10 years at this particular spot. What happened? Well,
I saw, yeah, that was a shock. And this group of people, my best friend and I ended up in a conversation with them, and they invited me to their church the following Sunday in Hollywood. And I said, well, what does your church believe about homosexuality? And they said, well, we believe it's a sin and blah, blah, blah. And because I had that night in Paris where I felt so empty, I was just kind of open to that.
Absolutely.
And they invited me to church. I went the following Sunday.
What happened when you were sitting there listening to that sermon, and then especially after the service was over?
So while I was listening to the sermon, everything the pastor was saying, preaching out of Romans chapter 7, was resonating as truth in my mind and my heart. And I didn't know why. I was like, this is true. This is true. I was literally on the edge of my seat the whole sermon for an hour. And then after the sermon, this guy on the side of the church prayed for me. I came back to my seat, and I was processing the sermon, the music, the worship music, and everything. And then all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit just like overwhelmed me. And God was like, I'm God. Jesus is my son. Heaven's real, hell's real, the Bible's true. You're now adopted into my kingdom. Welcome. And I was like, ah! And I just started bawling and bawling and bawling. And it was like the curtains had just parted, and I could see the truth for the first time in my life. I knew the meaning of life for the first time in my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
What did you do about your homosexuality at that point, though?
Well, it's funny because I knew instantly, I knew in that moment that this was no longer who I was. Being gay was not who I was, and it was over. I was done with it.
I wish we had more time. The book is amazing. It's called A Change of Affection. It's available wherever books are sold. You need to get a copy of it.